Amara, don't you get tired? You read in the morning, afternoon, night, even when others are sleeping, you are still reading. Zara, education is key to success. You have to stop thinking about clubbing now and focus on education before it's too late. Key to what again? Please don't say that again. But Zara, I was just explaining. Save it. I'm out of here. Zara, wait!
Zara, why can't you focus in life? At least be like your sister for once. This life of yours won't benefit you.
Mom, you don't just get it. I hate stress. A beautiful lady like me deserves a soft life.
Eh? Soft life? Come back here.
Listen, come closer. Let me tell you a story. A story about three sisters who left their poor village with big dreams, but the city they ran to almost destroyed them. The whole village woke up early that morning. Not because of the roosters or the cold breeze that came before sunrise, but because something big was happening. Three sisters were leaving. Amara, Zara, and Tammy stood outside their small mud-walled home with their bags packed and their hearts full of hope. The neighbors gathered around them, some smiling, some whispering, and some wiping quiet tears from the corners of their eyes. Nobody from this village had ever gone to a college in the big city. Nobody. And now, three girls from the same poor family were going all at once. It felt like the whole village was holding its breath. Their mother, Mama Rose, stood at the door. She was a short woman with tired eyes and hands that had known nothing but hard work. She had sold her goats, borrowed money from three different people, and spent months saving every small coin just to send her daughters to that college. She did not cry. She was too strong for that. But her eyes carried something heavy, something between pride and fear. She called her daughters to come close, one by one, and she spoke to them in a low, serious voice. "The city is not like this place," she said. "It will show you beautiful things. It will tempt you with comfort and shine. But do not forget who you are. Do not forget where you came from. And do not let the city swallow you whole." Zara, the second sister and the most beautiful of the three, laughed softly and hugged her mother. "Mama, don't worry. We are going to study and come back successful. Simple." She picked up her bag and adjusted her earrings, already looking like someone ready for a city, not someone saying goodbye to a village. Tammy, the third sister, nodded her head and hugged Mama Rose tightly. She was smart, everyone in the village knew it. Her teachers had always praised her. She whispered, "I will make you proud, Mama." And she meant every word. But Amora, the oldest, was the last to let go. She held her mother's hands for a long time and looked into her tired eyes. "I will not forget," she said quietly. "I promise you, Mama. I will not forget." The bus came just after sunrise. It was old and dusty and made a terrible noise, but to those three sisters, it looked like a golden chariot. They climbed in. The village people waved. Children ran alongside the bus for a little while until the road curved and the village disappeared behind the trees. Zara pressed her face to the window and smiled at the blur of green passing by. Tammy pulled out a small notebook and started writing her goals. But Amara closed her eyes, pressed her hand against her chest where her mother's last hug still felt warm, and made a silent promise to herself, a promise she intended to keep no matter what the city threw at her. None of them knew then just how differently the city would treat each of them. None of them knew what was coming. Listen, before I continue, if you love emotional stories like this, quickly hit that subscribe button, because this story will teach you something you may never forget. Nothing could have prepared them for what they saw when they arrived. The city roared. Cars moved in every direction. Buildings touched the clouds. Lights blinked and glowed even in the middle of the day. Music poured out of shops and restaurants. People walked fast, talked loud, and dressed like they had stepped out of a magazine. Amara held her bag tighter and looked around carefully. Tammy turned her head left and right, trying to see everything at once, laughing in disbelief. But Zora stopped walking completely in the middle of the street and just stared. Her eyes were wide and shining. A slow smile spread across her face. It was not the smile of someone who was surprised. It was the smile of someone who had just found exactly what they had always been looking for. Their college was even more stunning than the pictures in the brochure. White gates. Clean paths with flowers on both sides. Students in fine clothes walking around with expensive phones and brand new bags. The hostel rooms were small but felt like a palace compared to what the sisters had back home. That first evening, as they unpacked their things, Zora sat on her bed and scrolled through the social media pages of other students in the school. "Look at this girl," she said, showing her phone to Tammy. "She posted a photo at a rooftop party last night. And this one, she got a gift from some rich guy. A whole designer bag." Tammy leaned over and looked, her eyes wide. Amora, who was arranging her books on the small shelf beside her bed, did not even turn around. "Go to sleep, Zora," she said calmly. "Classes start tomorrow." But Zora did not sleep. Not for a long time. She lay on her back staring at the ceiling, her mind already spinning with plans. She had not come to the city just to study. She had come to live. To taste everything. To be seen. Back in the village, she had always been the prettiest girl, but pretty meant nothing when you had no money and nobody was watching. Here, in this city, everything was different. Here, you could become somebody. You could dress a certain way, talk a certain way, go certain places, and people would notice you. They would follow you. They would want to be around you. Zara wanted that more than she had ever wanted anything. She wanted it so badly it ached inside her chest like hunger. The first week of classes was good for all three of them. They studied together in the evenings. They sat in the front row. They answered questions in class. But by the second week, small cracks began to appear. Zara started sitting in the back. She made new friends quickly, loud girls with bright hair and expensive shoes who laughed about everything and talked about parties the way other people talked about dreams. Tammy noticed it but said nothing. Amora noticed it and said something, but Zora waved her off. "Relax, Amora. I'm not a child. I can study and have fun at the same time." Amora looked at her for a long moment. "Can you?" she asked quietly. Zara did not answer. She just laughed and walked away. And that small, unanswered question hung in the air between them like a warning that nobody wanted to hear. His name was Ethan. And the moment he walked across the college courtyard on a Tuesday morning, everything seemed to slow down. He was tall, well-dressed, with the kind of easy confidence that money and good looks produce when they exist in the same person. He was from a wealthy family, everyone knew it. He drove a car to school. He wore a different outfit every single day. He never chased anyone or begged for attention, which somehow made everyone want to give him even more. The girls talked about him in the hostel at night. They talked about him in the hallways. They posted about him on their pages without even using his name, just a description that everyone understood. And Zora, who noticed everything, noticed him on that very first Tuesday. "Did you see that boy?" Zara asked Tammy as they walked to their next class. "Ethan. His family owns half the businesses in this city." Tammy had seen him. She had tried not to stare, but she had seen him. "He's handsome," she admitted. "But we're here to study, not to look at boys." She said it confidently, like someone who believed their own words. Zara laughed. "You sound like Amora." It was meant to be an insult, but Tammy felt a small sting of pride. She had always admired Amora, even when she did not say so. But later that afternoon, when Ethan walked past her in the library and said, "Hey, nice notes," without even stopping, Tammy felt something flutter in her chest that she had not expected. She sat very still for a moment, then looked back down at her book. Focus, she told herself. Focus. Amara had seen Ethan too, but she had thought about him for exactly as long as it took to look at him and look away. There was no space in her mind for that kind of distraction. Her scholarship was not fully secured. She had readings to complete, assignments to submit, professors to impress. She studied every morning before breakfast and every night before bed. She went to office hours and asked professors questions that surprised them. One lecturer, Dr. Mensah, stopped her after class one afternoon and said, "Miss Amora, your essay last week was the strongest submission in the entire class. Keep this up." Amora thanked him quietly, walked out of the classroom, sat on a bench outside, and cried, not from sadness, but from relief. Because she had been working so hard, and sometimes hard work feels like pain before it feels like reward. Meanwhile, Zara had begun her campaign. She wore her best clothes to every class where she knew Ethan might be. She laughed loud enough for him to hear. She positioned herself at parties she heard he might attend. She asked friends of his friends to mention her name. It was not love, not even close. It was strategy. To Zara, Ethan was not just a handsome boy. He was a door. A door to a life she wanted, one with ease and comfort and admiration. She was not the only one trying to open that door. Half the girls in school were trying. But Zara was the boldest, and bold, she believed, always won in the end. What she did not yet understand was that Ethan had been watching, not her, but all of them. Quietly. Carefully. Like someone who had learned a long time ago not to trust every smile pointed in his direction. It started with one party. Just one. Zara had been invited to a rooftop gathering organized by some of the wealthier students in school. She dressed beautifully, took 30 pictures before leaving the room, and went. She came back at 2 in the morning, loud and glowing, shaking Tammy awake to tell her everything. "Tammy, you should have seen it. The food, the music, the lights, it was like a dream. And Ethan was there." Tammy turned over sleepily. "Did you talk to him?" Zara grinned. "I made sure he saw me." Tammy lay back and closed her eyes, but sleep did not come easily. Something in her chest was restless. Something that felt uncomfortably like wanting. By the 5th week, Zara had stopped attending 2 of her morning classes regularly. She said she was tired. She said the lecturers were boring. She said she would copy notes later. But later never fully came, because later was always followed by something more exciting, a hangout, a video call with a new friend, a shopping trip to a market she had discovered. She was building a life in the city, she told herself. She was networking. She was experiencing things. Tammy watched all of this and felt pulled in 2 directions. On one side was Amara, quiet, focused, always studying, always serious. On the other side was Zora, always laughing, always going somewhere, always returning with stories that sounded like they belonged in a movie. It was a Thursday afternoon when Tammy made the choice she would later regret most. Amara was in the library. Zora knocked on the hostel door with a bright smile and a simple question, "Come with me." Just this once. Just to look around the mall, nothing more. Tammy looked at her half-finished assignment on the desk. She looked at Zora's smile. She thought of Ethan casually saying nice notes in the library. She thought about how she had been working hard every day and where had it gotten her, still invisible, still unknown, still the girl from the village with second-hand shoes. She closed her notebook. Just this once, she said. Zora's smile widened. And just like that, the door that Amara had been quietly holding shut cracked open, just a little. But cracks, once made, have a way of growing. From that Thursday, everything began to shift. Tammy started joining Zara more often, not every time, but enough. Enough for her assignments to begin arriving late. Enough for her to start sitting beside Zora at the back of class instead of at the front. Enough for her to start caring more about what she wore and how she looked and who noticed. She still studied, but with less hunger than before. She still answered in class, but less often. And when Amora would sit across from her in the evenings and say, "Tammy, I'm worried." "You're changing," Tammy would smile and say, "I'm fine, Amora. I'm not like Zora. I can handle it." And she believed herself. She truly believed herself. That was the most dangerous part. While Tammy was drifting slowly, Amora was rising quietly. Dr. Mensah invited her to join a small academic study group made up of only the top students in the faculty. She stayed back after seminars to discuss ideas with professors. She read books that were not even on the syllabus because she was curious, because she was hungry, because she had not traveled all this way and broken her mother's back to come home with nothing. She made one close friend, a calm, bookish girl named Sandra who came from a similar background. They studied together in the mornings before the library filled up. They pushed each other. They celebrated small wins quietly. Amora never posted about any of it. She had no time for that. And honestly, she did not need anyone to see it to know it was real. One evening, Amora came back to the hostel to find Zara sitting on her bed, doing her nails and watching a video on her phone, while Tammy sat beside her laughing at something on Zora's screen. Their textbooks were on the desk, closed. Amora looked at the books. She looked at her sisters. She put her own bag down slowly. "Do you both know there's a mid-semester test next week?" she asked. Zara shrugged. "We know. We'll read tomorrow." Tammy looked slightly uncomfortable. "I started reading," she said. "A little." Amora did not shout. She never shouted. She sat down on her bed and looked at Tammy directly. "Tammy, you are smart. Smarter than you even know. But smart is nothing if you don't use it. Please. Don't let this place do to you what it's doing to Zora." Zara looked up from her nails with a sharp expression. "What is it doing to me, Amora? Tell me. What exactly is it doing to me?" Her voice had an edge to it, not quite anger, but something close. Amora met her eyes. "It's making you forget why you came here." There was silence for a moment. Then Zora laughed, but it was a hollow laugh, the kind that people use when something has touched them in a place they do not want to admit. She went back to her nails. Tammy looked down at her phone. And Amora opened her textbook and began to read. Nothing more was said that night. But the words stayed in the room long after the lights went out, floating in the dark like smoke that nobody wanted to breathe but nobody could avoid. Across the school, Ethan was watching. Not in a strange way, he was simply observant, the way quiet people often are. He had noticed the three sisters when they first arrived, mostly because they were different, fresh-faced, unpolished, clearly new to everything. He had noticed how Zara always seemed to position herself near him. He had noticed how Tammy sometimes looked torn between two different versions of herself. And he had noticed Amora, who had never once looked at him the way the others did. She looked past him. Through him. As if he were furniture in a room she was trying to study in. It was irritating. And then it was interesting. And then, quietly, it was something else entirely, something he did not yet have a name for. If you're still watching up to this point, then this story is already touching you. Go ahead and subscribe, because what's about to happen next will shock you. On a bright Monday morning, the head of faculty stood in front of the lecture hall and made an announcement that changed the mood of the entire building. There was going to be an inter-college academic competition, the most prestigious one in the region. 2 students from their college would be selected to represent the school. The selection would be based on academic performance, essays submitted, and a short interview. The winners of the overall competition would receive full scholarships for the rest of their academic careers, plus a cash prize and an internship with a major organization. The hall buzzed with noise. People whispered. Some looked excited. Some looked nervous. And some, like Zora, who was sitting in the back barely paying attention, did not even realize what had just been said until the person beside her explained it. The results of the selection came out 3 days later on the faculty notice board. A crowd gathered. People jostled to get close enough to read the names. And when the crowd thinned and the 2 selected names were clear, something remarkable had happened. The first name was Amara. And the second name, to the shock of many people, and perhaps most of all to herself, was Tammy. The lecturers had selected Tammy based on her early performance, her first essays, and the genuine intelligence she had displayed in the first few weeks before the drift began. Her name was on that board because of who she used to be, and now she had to become that person again. Tammy stood before the notice board for a long time. Her heart was beating fast. Amara, standing beside her, took her hand and squeezed it. "This is your chance," Amara said softly. "Don't waste it." Tammy nodded, not trusting her voice. Behind them, Zara had read the board too. Her name was not there. It was not even close to being there. For a moment, something flickered across her face, a shadow, a recognition, a pain she quickly covered up with a casual expression. "Well," she said, too brightly, "at least 2 sisters made it." But her voice came out slightly wrong. Slightly thin. And Tammy heard it. And something in Tammy sharpened in that moment, a guilt-edged determination that felt stronger than anything she had felt since arriving in the city. The competition was 8 weeks away. Amara immediately set up a preparation schedule. She shared it with Tammy. The topics were broad, general knowledge, critical thinking, problem-solving, essay writing under pressure. They would need to study hard and smart. For the first 2 weeks, Tammy threw herself into it. She studied with Amara every night. She returned to sitting in the front row. Dr. Mensah noticed and nodded approvingly. She felt herself waking up, like someone who had been half asleep for months and was finally, fully opening their eyes. But then Zora came knocking on the 3rd week with a smile and a plan for a Friday evening outing. And Tammy, who had promised herself, who had promised Amara, paused. She paused for just 1 second too long. And Zora, who knew her sister's silences very well by now, smiled wider. "Just Friday," Zora said. "You deserve a break." And Tammy, exhausted and wanting so badly to believe it, went. The Fridays became Saturdays. The Saturday became Sunday evenings. Tammy told herself she was managing. She told herself she could read in the mornings and still keep up. She told herself she knew the content well enough. She told herself a lot of things. But the weeks were passing and the competition was getting closer, and the truth was that the gap between what Amara knew and what Tammy knew was growing wider every single day. Amara saw it. She tried. She would send Tammy voice notes with summaries. She would leave notes on her desk. She would wait up late, books open, hoping Tammy would come back from wherever she had gone and sit down to read. Sometimes she did. Most times she did not. One night, Amara sat Tammy down and spoke plainly. No softness this time. No careful words. "Tammy, the competition is in 3 weeks. I've been watching you and I'm scared for you. Not because you're not smart, you are the most naturally gifted of all of us. But you have not been preparing. You have been pretending to prepare. There is a difference." Tammy's jaw tightened. "I've been reading, when?" Amara asked simply. Tammy opened her mouth. Closed it. The silence answered. Amara continued, her voice low but firm. "I'm not your mother. I can't force you. But Tammy, this is the opportunity Mama sold her goats for. Don't throw it away for Friday nights. Tammy looked at her hands. Her eyes were burning. I know, she whispered. I know, Amora. But knowing and doing are two different things. And for Tammy, the distance between those two things had become enormous. She went back to studying, harder, this time, but there were simply too many gaps. Too many lectures she had half attended. Too many chapters she had told herself she would read and hadn't. Too many nights she had traded for music and laughter and the feeling of belonging. She did her best in the final 2 weeks. She stayed up late. She drank tea to stay awake. She even turned down Zara twice. But deep inside, in the quiet honest place that lives in everyone, she knew. She knew she had not done enough. And she was terrified. Meanwhile, Zara's world was beginning to unravel in ways she had not foreseen. The wealthy friends she had made were not as loyal as she had imagined. When she couldn't keep up with their spending, new clothes, expensive restaurants, branded everything, they drifted. They didn't fight with her or insult her. They simply stopped including her. Invitations slowed down. Group chats went quiet when she logged on. She started to see what she had not wanted to see, that she had never truly been one of them. She had been entertainment. She had been novel. And now the novelty had faded. She sat alone in the hostel one evening, looking at her phone, waiting for a message that did not come. For the first time since arriving in the city, Zara felt something she had never admitted to herself before. She felt lonely. Deeply, painfully lonely. The morning of the competition was quiet and cool. Amora woke before dawn. She washed her face, dressed carefully, sat on her bed, and closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of Mama Rose. She thought of the goats that were no longer in the yard back home. She thought of tired hands and borrowed money and a bus that smelled of dust and hope. Then she opened her eyes, picked up her bag, and walked out the door. She was ready. She had been ready for weeks. Not because she had never been afraid, but because she had faced the fear and prepared anyway. That is what readiness really is. Tammy woke up feeling sick. Not with illness, with dread. She sat on the edge of her bed and could not move for several minutes. The things she had studied swam in her head in a disorganized cloud. She tried to grasp one clear thought and it slipped away. She tried to remember a formula, a key argument, a framework she had gone over, and the gaps were obvious. Terrible and obvious. Zara, surprisingly, was awake too. She sat beside Tammy on the bed without being asked and held her hand for a moment. She did not say anything clever or cheerful. She just held her hand. And in that silence between them was everything, all the choices, all the nights, all the chances they had each handled differently. Tammy squeezed Zara's hand, then stood up and walked out to face what was coming. The competition was held in a grand auditorium. Students from 5 other colleges were there. Cameras. Judges at a long table. An audience that included lecturers, college officials, and even some industry representatives. Amora walked in and took her seat. She was calm. When the competition began, she answered with clarity and depth. She wrote her essay with structure and feeling. She solved problems step by step, showing her reasoning, never rushing. Every time a question was thrown at her, she met it, not perfectly, because nobody is perfect, but with genuine knowledge and confident thought. The judges leaned forward. They exchanged looks. Dr. Mensah, watching from the audience, sat very still with quiet pride on his face. Tammy did not fall apart dramatically. She was not the worst in the room. But she was far below where she should have been. Questions she should have answered with confidence came out uncertain and incomplete. Her essay lacked the depth that her early work had shown. She knew the answers were somewhere inside her, she could feel them just out of reach, buried under all the evenings she had traded for something else. When it was over and she walked out of the auditorium into the open air, she did not cry. She stood very still in the afternoon light and felt something settle in her chest, something cold and clear and true. The kind of truth you cannot run from anymore. The results came the next morning. Amora had won. Not just placed, won. First place overall across all competing colleges. The scholarship was hers. The prize was hers. The internship was hers. When her name was announced, there was a moment of stunned silence in the faculty hallway, and then applause. Real, genuine applause from students and lecturers alike. Dr. Mensah shook her hand and said, "This is only the beginning for you." Amora smiled, a quiet, private smile, the kind that belongs to people who have walked in the dark for a long time and are finally standing in the light. She called Mama Rose that evening. When she heard her mother's voice, the tears finally came. "Mama," she said. "It worked. It worked." Tammy sat with Amora that night and did not try to make excuses. That was important, the not making excuses. She looked at her sister and said simply, "I wasted it. I see that now. I had everything I needed and I wasted it." Amora did not say, "I told you so." She did not need to. Instead, she said, "You didn't waste everything. You still have time. You still have the rest of this year, and the next, and the one after that. But Tammy, you have to choose. Right now. You have to choose who you are going to be." Tammy wiped her eyes. The village felt very far away. Mama Rose's voice felt very close. She thought of the notebook she had carried on the bus, full of goals, full of hope. She had not opened it in months. She decided that night to open it again. Zora's unraveling was slower but deeper. The lifestyle she had chased had not just left her, it had left marks. She had failed 2 of her courses. She owed money she did not have to people she barely knew. The girl who had arrived in the city shining and laughing and certain of her beauty now sat in a hostel room that felt too quiet, with a phone that barely rang. One night she went to Amora, not to Tammy, but to Amora, the sister she had dismissed the most, the one she had called boring and serious and no fun. She knocked on the door late. When Amora opened it and saw Zora's face, no makeup, eyes red, shoulders low, she did not say a word. She simply opened the door wider. Zara walked in and sat down. And for the first time since leaving the village, she cried. Really cried. And Amora sat beside her, and held her, and let her. As for Ethan, he found Amora the day after the competition results were announced. Not in a dramatic way. He simply walked to where she was sitting under a tree outside the library, reading, and sat down across from her. She looked up. He looked at her for a moment and then said, "I've been watching people since I came to this school. I've seen girls try to impress me, perform for me, position themselves around me. I thought that was just how people were." He paused. "But you never did any of that." Amora tilted her head slightly. "Why would I? I didn't come here for you." He laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. "I know," he said. "That's exactly why I'm here." And for the first time in the entire story, Amora looked at him, truly looked at him, and smiled. Not because she had won a boy, but because she understood what his words meant, that she had stayed true to herself in a city that had tried, with all its glitter and noise, to make her someone else. And she had not let it. They had all left the same village on the same dusty morning. They had packed the same kind of hope. They had heard the same mother's warning standing at the same small door. But they had each walked into the city differently, and the city, as cities always do, had simply shown them back to themselves. Amora had stayed rooted, and she rose. Tammy had drifted, and she fell, but not so far that she could not find her way back. And Zora had chased the shine until it burned her, and learned, in the ash and the quiet that followed, what her mother had always meant. The city had not broken any of them beyond repair. It had only revealed the choices they were always going to make. And in the end, that is the most honest thing any story can say: who you become in hard places is not the city's doing. It is yours. It has always been yours. If this story taught you something, don't just leave quietly, subscribe, so you never miss stories that open your eyes and change your mindset.